So a bit of a background to Andean. Andean is only a new company. We've only acquired the project probably about 14 months ago, I think. First presentation at the conference last year was when we actually acquired the project the day before. So second time here. The investment strategy for Andean, we sort of had a global search criteria and narrowed it down to being a silver gold dominant system on when we looked at the silver market itself, which I'll touch on a little bit. And we settled on Chile and South America, but Chile particular as the investment area that we would look at for it, simply because, as many of the speakers here have said, the similarities between the Western Australian mining system and Chile are so closely linked that it's like doing business at the same location. So the project itself, we're fairly unique. So we sit in the very south area of Chile in the ASL region. So it's unique because most of the mining occurs in the province south of Santiago or north of Santiago. So we're the only mining project in that region effectively, and there's no other mining project within about 500 kilometres of where we are. So it's a unique position that we're in. The resource itself, we just put out an update, it's about 111 million ounces silver equivalent, so 80 to 1, about 10 million tonnes. The project itself was discovered by Freeport back in the 80s, and it was built by Core Mining as their first ever project they had back in the mid-90s. So it's had a 25-year mining history in place. And coincidentally, the project itself was the very first environmental impact statement ever done in a mine in Chile, and it was voluntary at the time. So it's got a fairly historic nature to it. The team behind it, I'll touch briefly on that as a couple of names there everyone's probably aware of. The mine itself, as I said, it was pre-development. It's 500,000 tonne per annum float plant, so it has probably about a 150 million US replacement value to the project. We hold about 400 square kilometres of land, sandwiched against Lake General Carrera in an area of land called the Desierto Massif, which I'll go on to. I won't go on to Chile. I think we've had a fairly in-depth on why Chile is the investment choice that everyone should be looking at. But suffice to say, yearly, US $700 million of direct exploration investment in the ground, not including through mining. So a fairly significant investment in mining within the country itself. So quick background of the team. Most of our team is sitting in Chile itself. So just a couple of key people there over in Chile. So Damien Kerr, our COO, 30 years of experience through Latin America. I think he went over there about 30 years ago and didn't come back. He loved it so much. Alvaro Fuentes, our General Manager of Operations, previous roles as General Manager of KGHM in Chile, and before that 6 years as Commercial Director of Ausenco South America, so knows how to operate big mines, knows how to build operations. Sophia, our Environmental and Permitting Manager, before joining us, she was Head of Environmental Assessment for SIA, and before that she was Project Manager and Director of MIRMA, which is one of the large environmental consulting firms in Chile for about 15 years. So fairly well experienced team over there. A year ago we started with about 5 people, a site on care and maintenance, and no presence on the ground, drilling, etc. I think today, a year later, we have 160 people on the ground. We're the largest private employer in the ASEAN region to date, and we have 3 drill rigs going with a 4th coming at the moment. So we're fairly active in exploring. In that time, we've found 5 new major discoveries in an area which I'll touch on that you'd expect to be well and truly picked over in the number of years that have been there. Won't dwell too much, but our major holders so far, Steve Parsons, a lot of North American holders. So Sprott has just joined our board, and we're sitting on their physical ETF fund at the moment, a select group of companies. We also have Scotia Asset Management and probably about 45% North American holders so far. So why we went with silver, just briefly, it was pretty obvious of what will happen to silver in the future. It is used in everything. It's the key component of solar. If you don't have silver, you don't have solar. It's also used in all EV technologies and electronics. Silver is the most conductive metal in the world, more so than copper. It's used in medical and sanitary requirements. So biomedical dentistry, it's one of the most antibacterial products in the world. It's why it's coating of all of our medical instruments. and again, lesser extent financial. But the main reason, over the last 4 years, we're only producing a billion ounces of silver per year. The last 4 years, we're using 1.2 to 1.25 billion ounces. So the last 4 years, we're not actually producing enough silver to meet the market demands, and that is coming from vault stocks around the world. London stocks down 28%, COMEX down 16%. So really this deficit's coming from those vault stocks. So we identified silver as, not now, but maybe in a couple of years' time, as potential that, you know, all these solar projects that are going ahead in Australia, there will not be enough silver to actually meet the 2030 demands to produce all those solar panels in Australia, let alone the entire world, effectively, or replace them in the future, if that trend keeps going. So getting onto the mine now. So Cerro Bayo, as I said, we're sitting in the ASN region down south of Chile. Historic operation, about 30 years worth of mining on the area. So we sit in a belt of rocks called the Desierto Massif. We're the only mine on the Chilean side of the border, sitting about 450 metres elevation, so a very nice area. Mine itself, very low profile, sits in with the environment. This photo was taken from the main highway running through the region itself. So, you know, the mine itself was designed to basically contour to the environment. Belt of Rocks Desierto holds such deposits as Cerro Negro for Newmont and Cerro Vanguardia for AngloGold Ashanti. It holds probably about 50 million ounces of gold in that belt of rocks, which stretches from the Argentinian seaboard into Chile, and we're the only mine found on the Chilean seaboard. The project itself, our key requirements that we're going for is that we spent the last year establishing the resource. We've gone from 25 million ounces silver equivalent to about 111 million ounces, and we're only just touching the sides of that as well. The resource is just gold and silver in itself. So right now we're focusing on establishing a potential 10-year mine plan. In the background you'll have the forward-facing stuff of the drilling and the exploration results, but in the background, as I said, we already have an approved EIA, historic one in place. We have full water rights that would be in place since the 90s. We still have multi-year use on our TSF if we really want to, multi-year permits to extract a couple of million tonnes out of the ground. That's not the aim of the game. The aim of the game is to actually redo a lot of the mining permits, EIAs in place, and look at the studies to expand the operation to a 10-year plus operation. So that would get it, as a base case minimum, to a 40-year operating mine and beyond. So getting on to the operation itself, the mill, it was put on warm idle in 2022. So it's spun over each week. The mill itself, you can see it's a fairly good quality mill, considering if anyone who's been to a goldfields plant, which is in the fact that this was built in 1995. It's kept in a shed, ambient temperature of about 15 degrees year round, and fed through our water intake from Lake General Carrera, so it's fed by snow melt effectively. So it's one of the better quality mills that we have. We also have installed power of about 15 megawatts. The mine requires about 6 to operate, so we have 3 times as much power to operate the mine. We also have a wind farm on the top of the hill behind the mill area that you can see there. As part of the initiative with community and re-establish the mine, we're looking at relocating the wind farm to a location halfway between the local town of 4,000 people where our workforce is, and linking the requirement for their power and the mine to build the first renewable energy hub south of Lake General Carrera in the Patagonia region. So it'll be one of those projects that hasn't happened in the past that will get the green light in the future. Our community engagement, as I said, we are the largest private employer in the region. When the mine gets going, it'll be well and truly beyond that. So we have a lot of visitors and a lot of work in the background of what we need to do to go forward, bring the jobs back to the region again. So we're looking at training programs to bring all of our workforce as much as we can local, so heavy vehicle fitters, truck drivers and operators and those sorts of things. We also participate in the local regional emergency services and the community days around there. We also have assisted areas such as installing new water intake platforms for the local farmers. So touching on the mine itself, as I said, it's a pure low sulfidation epithermal system where the veins outcrop to surface. So example, some of the veins that we found, I think the highest grade veins are, a meteorite running 13% silver over multiple kilometres. So it's a very large system in itself. We have 400 square kilometres, and this is just the Laguna Verde area. So you have the underground mines of Dagny, Dahlia, Fabiola, Yasna, Coyita Trend. So the Coyita Trend is about 1.4 kilometre long subvertical vein. Then you have the open pit areas of Teitau, Condor, Cristal, Pegaso. So the mine plan itself will be integrated open pit and underground mine plan itself. There's over 30 kilometres of underground tunnels already existing underneath that mill itself. So it's well established, and that will feed into a low capex restart plan. So just looking at one of our main restart areas, you see sort of the underground workings on the Coyita vein. So this vein itself would form, as I said, one of the key underground mines for the future restart of the mine. Grades themselves, significant, 2.8 metres at 2,500 grams per tonne silver equivalent, and 80 to 1 if you want. So, the area itself, you're talking, if gold equivalent, about a 12 gram ore body. One of our new discoveries that we've just found, so we've taken this from discovery in 14 months ago to a maiden resource right now of about 6 million ounces silver equivalent. Again, 4.1 grams per tonne if you want to talk in gold. But it just shows the level of discovery. This was 2 kilometres away from the processing plant and didn't have had a resource on it, and was only lightly picked up in prospecting. So this ore body itself, we've only defined it over 500 metres, but the strike on surface is 1.4 kilometres, so we're only just touching the surface of what is still remaining in the area. Stepping from Laguna Verde 10 kilometres away, the Cerebao mine. So the Cerebao underground was the original core mine found in the district, and this really goes to show the exploration potential. We've just discovered this Drought Master Claudia corridor in the last year and really started defining it. So it's sitting on a big, for a geologist, graben structure, so just a big volcanic structural belt. The western margin of it, the Claudia vein, is running about 4 kilometres with an average grade of about 3,000 grams per tonne at surface of silver. Again, infrastructure still in place from that area. These mines were walked away by core mining in the early 2000s and never no one's ever gone back to them. So Marcella Underground, you can see the last level of the mine that they didn't fire before they walked away. They developed it and just walked away. So very significant veins here that will be coming in here in the next 6 months to start drilling these out. But again, that 2 to 5 metre true width of the main vein, and pretty significant grades to them. Along with the undergrounds, we've also got the open pit style mineralisation. So when we say open pit, it's a variation of it over there where you just literally get on the vein and you just follow the vein itself for a kilometre on surface down 20 metres and then stope up into it below. So it's more slot cut mining. So there's multiple veins here. When these were mined, I think the open pit cut-off grade was 3 grams a tonne because silver was about $2 and gold was probably about $400 in there. So, there is still significant opportunity. And these ones completely drilled by core mining. I think historically there's 900,000 metres of drilling on this site. So, it was just a simple case for us to come in, low cost, reevaluate, rebuild these resources in place. So where are we sitting now? Can't put where we are on the thing because of listing regulations, but Santa Elena mine, we have about 111 million ounces silver equivalent and about 353 grams per tonne. So we're sitting in the range of mines that are owned by some of the major companies like your Hochschilds, your Pan Americans, and those guys. Our ultimate goal is to push up into that 200 plus million ounce range. So you're in the ranks of Aya Gold and Silver's, the Gounder deposit, Imaculda, and those sort of mines that are held by multi-billion dollar companies. So our regional discovery, I'll just touch on that in a minute. So proximal to the road, 500 metres away from an existing pit that was mined last about 15 years ago. These are all new discovered veins. So this corridor itself is 1 kilometre wide by 4 kilometres long, with the teams on the ground at the moment just walking it and growing this thing. So, every time they go out, they extend these veins another 500 metres along strike just on surface. So that's the level of discovery that we're actually dealing with here, where we literally just walk and walk and walk and find more and more and more and more. So at some point, you have to stop and start drilling, but it's not a geologist's way to do things. We're also in the process of running a geophysical campaign. So what you'd expect to have done over these systems is, your standard process of geophysics and all the background information before you drill. None of that has been done on any of this project in the entire history of it, because everything's been outcropping. So now we're going through and running a 300 line kilometre CSAMT program across the entire project. And what we're finding, lo and behold, these veins are fairly massive. So you can see some of our test lines that we did around the Raoul Marcella line, the Cerro Bayo vein, shows up the anomalous alteration corridors through there. What we found when we extend them across, and under this shallow 5 metre cover where no one has bothered looking before, Pampa La Pera, we found a 500 metre wide, 1 kilometre long vein sitting 5 metres below the surface that hasn't been discovered yet. So again, the level of discovery that we can actually make. Sitting on top of the hill, I'll just skip through that. So just quickly touching on, so we've got a lot of growth where every 2 quarters we do a resource update. We're pushing through the drilling right now with 3 rigs, getting a 4th on the ground soon. We're sort of doing about 40,000 metres a year. Regional targeting, I've only touched on our first areas. We also have 2 other projects where we have base metals and copper discoveries that haven't been boots on the ground for the last decade. So we have a lot of growth going ahead, and as I said, it's pretty exciting times through that region. All right, thank you.